there's a report that has been going around that an anonymous coach from this year's coaching staff or former, we don't know, it hasn't been confirmed, has illuminated on some of the backdoor events that have been happening with the 49ers. Basically, since week 3, a quote has been put out that the coaching
Well, I can read it real
staff.
quick. I got the article in front of me.
Sure.
This is from Mike Silver in The Athletic. It came out yesterday. Title is Niners are clinging to hope while enduring a quote unquote season from hell. And the quote comes from an anonymous assistant coach. This is what Silver writes. 12 games into what one 49ers assistant coach described as a quote unquote season from hell, the defending NFC champions aren't doing much dancing, yada, yada, yada. Then one more quote from this coach. This is Silver writing again. The Niners' mojo disappeared in September when they followed up a seemingly impressive season-opening victory over the Jets with back-to-back road defeats to the Vikings and the Rams. Since then, said the assistant coach, quote, day by day, it's been falling apart.
I mean, definitely what it speaks to is just all of the things that we've seen with the 49ers throughout their offseason, the tumultuous contract negotiations that they've had, and what seems to be just a gut punch, to be honest with you, is that you can compartmentalize from what we've seen thus far, right? We're in week 13 of the season, week 14 week 14 of the season, and we can look at the offseason, and then we can also look at what happened or what transpired during the training camp, where we saw during training camp that energy was low. There wasn't a consistency of effort. It seemed as though that there were moments during practice where there were multiple lulls in practice, where it seemed as though that they were just going through the motions. One thing that we can talk to now, if you really have a crystal ball, we all should have seen it then, but we know why they struggled in special teams this year, because they barely practiced it during camp, like if at all. It was all but an afterthought period. It's just something that they were just moving on to, trying to kind of checking a box. My biggest issue right now is understanding the injuries is something that I don't think that anybody can see coming. I mean, you expect them coming, but I think that this team kind of got away from the usual because they had such a healthy season last year. Being hurt with losing Brendan Ayuk immediately, having Javon Hargraves falling out of the lineup, not even getting your Churgos Matu started up until the season got going. You could definitely see how things could have been rough, but I don't think anybody would have thought that quotes like a season from hell or things would have been falling apart by week 3. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think this is a potentially explosive article from Silver, because if the assistant coach is on the team now, then that suggests that there's someone talking to the media off the record about how bad it's going, which is a
Right.
bad sign. That's usually the indication of like a team that's kind of falling apart, and someone has decided that like the people need to know about how bad it really is. Or Michael is quoting someone who's not currently an assistant coach on the team and being messy. But Michael's been doing this for 30 plus years, and he wrote, let me again how he put it. 12 games into what one 49ers assistant coach described, that would imply the guy's on the team now. I mean, it seems like it would be a real stretch to talk to someone who used to be on the team and call him a 49ers assistant coach. Doesn't that imply he's on the team? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for them to be for the reports to be anecdotal by week, it would almost imply that they're talking about somebody who was definitely on the team.
He said he was
Also,
there on Wednesday, so it's implying that he somehow was in the in the facility and talked to someone who's currently employed with the 49ers who really wanted to be like, yo, it's terrible here right now. I mean, that's bad. That's the kind of stuff that hasn't happened with the 49ers in Kyle's tenure.
I'll tell you one thing right now. You know who probably is the leak if it's somebody outside of the coaching staff?
Who?
Coach Wilkes. It's got to be
Oh,
Wilkes. It's definitely got to be Wilkes. I mean, um, if you think about it, Grant, it's is it really that far fetched for for it to be that far, for it to be that bad this quickly? I mean, right now we would have to look at just the performance of how the team has been moving forward. Uh, I one would say that Kyle just hasn't had feel. He's not necessarily calling games well. The team doesn't seem prepared. There seems to be effort issues late in games. Right now, the only thing that's amazing to me is how much it seems to be how much grace Kyle is giving Coach Sorensen. That's probably the only silver line out of all of this. What would you have to say about that? Like as far as like Kyle, he seems to be not really covering for Coach Sorensen.
Well, yeah, he's not. I mean, he's going to fire Coach Sorensen. That guy's
Mm-hmm.
going to be gone. And I think when you listen to him talk yesterday, you could sort of hear him trying to sort of advocate for himself. I don't think it's probably too little, too late. I like him. He seems like a nice guy, but he's not going to keep his job. But what I wanted to say is like to Silver's point, or to this assistant coach's point about how it's been falling apart since like the whole season. Like, let's go back to week 1. 90 minutes before kickoff, you get the news about Christian. Like, not only is he not going to play, but he's going to be going on IR.
For a
And it's
while.
such a gut punch. Like, oh, like you thought everything was going to be okay. You got Ayuk on the field. You got Trent Williams on the field. No Christian. And the Jets are supposed to be good. And the Niners smoked the Jets. And Jordan Mason steps up. And it's this great story. And after the game, Jordan Mason gets his moment. He's smiling. It's like it's so typical Niners. You know what I mean? Like some adversity hits and some guy you don't know steps up and he's great. And then he says that he found out since Friday. And then he's like practically he's not in tears, but he was so upset.
He's very upset.
This great night was marred.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's been the season. You know what I mean? They can't sustain anything positive. And as soon as something good happens, they taint it somehow with their own messiness. Like the Cowboys game was similar. You smoke the Cowboys, and then after the game, it becomes like a political movement. It's like, you know what I mean? One after
like,
another.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like the one thing that hurt them the most, in my opinion, is that it just seems as though that every time they got any type of positive momentum or one step forward, there was something that always took them about not even 2, but 10 steps back.
Yeah.
The injury
Because
with
after
IU,
that week 1 win, it wasn't like, look at the Niners, they won with Jordan Mason. It was like, God, they didn't tell about Christian McCaffrey, and Jordan Mason couldn't
even
enjoy. It was all
celebrate.
bad.
Yeah. But even then, I mean, I felt as though that there were moments in the season early on where, you know, you did see spurts where I was pleased at the fact that even though, yeah, after the New York game, you know, the whole Christian gate, that happened. But I was pleased at the fact that I felt at that time that Kyle was going to adjust. And you remember in that game, the game plan was not Jordan Mason. The game plan was try to get the ball out, get Deebo Samuel involved, and really try to get with short intermediate passes. It wasn't until the Jets all but shut that down until they had to lean into Jordan Mason, and he kind of took the game over. Like, I felt like, oh, okay. I was fooled, honestly. Oh my God, Kyle is adjusting. Like nobody would have leaned. I don't ever see him leaning on Jordan Mason like that. I mean, and then earlier in the season, yeah, Brandon Ayuk was bad early. We just gotta face it. He was bad. But what killed is that he got hurt probably with some of the best 2 quarters that he had all season. Right, like he was cooking before he got hurt, and you know there's a lot of moments in that season where if you think so, if you think that the Niners were definitely going to take off, or it showed you glimpses where you thought that they were going to kind of show shades of old, it kind of fell flat. And I think that's another thing that really hurt about this one is that it's not like we saw shades of what this team truly was this season early on, but I felt like we were fighting not only against what the team was letting us know, where they were practically in denial, but the national media. I felt like a lot of people were waiting for the Niners to kind of show themselves. But as one would have it, things kind of just turned out to be, you know, we are who we are.
And to me, what happened is like they were having all these missteps like along the way where it was like something's wrong with this team. You're like you have too many distractions. You guys aren't tied in together the way you used to be. And then it like culminated with they beat the Cowboys. Osa does his thing, which is very controversial and again puts the Niners in the spotlight among people who don't even follow football. They have a bye week. They play the Bucks on the road. They're winning. This is the only winning streak of the season for the 49ers. And in the fourth quarter, Debo hits the long snapper on TV. And the Niners haven't been anything since that moment. I mean, they hang on and win that game, and since then they've lost everything. And I think that's kind of it. All culminated in them melting down and turning on each other, which they'd kind of been, we kind of seen it coming. They finally do it. And since then, they're not a team anymore. It's just interesting. Like, yeah, they could pull it out and win this week and win next week, but are they still a team? How together are they? They say they are, but let's see it.
Yeah, I really do want to see it. I'd like to see them kind of pull themselves up. And I hate to say this, but right now, in order for them to almost kind of keep the culture of the locker room, moral victories are at like an all-time high. That's what's really at stake for the last 5 weeks of this season is, it's not been losses, bro. We be getting blown out. These are blowouts. These are like not putting your best foot forward, giving up, walking away from the challenge type deal. Like at this stage of the game, it's not even about like being a team. This is teetering on the side of, are you doing your job? So,
yeah, and they better not do that this week at home. It's one thing to do that in Green Bay when it's cold and in Buffalo when it's cold and you're underdogs, but like they're 4-point favorites this week. We're going to talk about that when we get in our Bet US segment, sponsored by Bet US.